What do you know? I leave or I start live streaming, and then as soon as the countdown hits live stream, I have to go turn on some games. Welcome to this live stream. I'm Adam with ArcadeHeroes.com. Happy New Year to everybody out there. Although I do, I hate to see the news out there in the world where Japan got hit by a pretty massive earthquake and lots of aftershocks, and so my hearts and my heart's definitely and my thoughts, prayers, heart, everything is with the people over there. And I haven't heard of any deaths, at least, and so hopefully it stays that way. But seen some stuff from the damage, and it's just like, geez. But for some lighter things, here to talk about the arcade industry back in 2023, as well as give you a preview of what's coming up in 2024. Also got a new microphone here, so if there are any issues with hearing me, please let me know, and I will do what I can to get that corrected. But this one is supposed to be better for podcasting, so we will see how that shakes out. But I'm essentially going to kind of go over, not that one, this post here on Arcade Heroes that I posted back on Friday. The State of the Industry in Arcade Year in Review 2023. As you probably noticed at the beginning of the live stream, I am at my arcade in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so since I do not turn on all the games so that I don't waste a bunch of power and waste a bunch of costs on electricity, I may have to go and turn some things on. It just depends on how busy it gets. But up until when I started live streaming, it had been dead. That's just the way that it works. But thank you for letting me know on that, Arcade Z, so I know that the mic sounds great. So hopefully it just stays that way. And, of course, during this stream, if you have any questions about the arcade industry, again, this is about the whole thing, what happened last year, what's coming this year, feel free to put them in the chat, and I will cover that. But let's start off with the website. So arcadeheroes.com has now been in existence for 17 years, and so it hit that on December 3rd of last year, of course. And so my heartfelt thanks to everybody out there for making that possible. If it wasn't for the readers and the viewers and all that, then there'd be no point in me spending all this time on researching and doing things. And another thing I want to thank as well are my advertisers. I try not to glum things up on the channel with advertising and such. I know you get plenty of that already with YouTube, but I do need to acknowledge those companies who have paid to have advertising on the site, because they also help make it possible, as it's not free to run a website, especially one that's been around this long. It has a lot of data that has to be stored and all that stuff. But there's Touch Magics, Wallop, Raw Thrills. Raw Thrills has been doing it the longest. Are also going to be adding a independent company called Slackers Inc. They created Galactic Battleground, and I might be adding a couple of others as well. There's one that I need to follow up on in email after I finish this. But YouTube channel has been growing slowly but steadily. And yeah, that's one thing that I also try and aim for. I mean, there have been things that I've gotten an email before where it's not related to the arcade industry at all, and it just, I don't know, feels weird to me. But no Raid Shadow Legends here, or whatever else is the latest thing right now on the YouTuber circuit of advertisers. But I do try to keep it focused on arcades if possible, which probably does mean that I'm throwing away a lot of money. I'm sure if I took casino ads, then that would be a wholly different thing. But as far as readers and viewers from all over the world, I mean, most do come from the United States. As far as the blog goes, it's USA, followed by UK, Canada, Japan, and Australia. Whereas on YouTube, the viewership, it's still number one for the United States, but the second place is Indonesia, and then you have the UK, the Philippines, and Japan. And my guess on Indonesia is most of it has to do with the videos I've done about Maximum Tune, as I know the Maximum Tune circuit is pretty strong over there in Indonesia. And we will talk a little bit about Maximum Tune 6 RR Plus coming up here soon. But first off, beyond the website stuff, let's get into the business in general. As I mentioned, I'm sitting in an arcade right now. I've been doing my arcade business for 15 and a half years and seen a lot of economic changes in that time. And last year, as I mentioned on the blog post, was perhaps one of the weirdest years in business that I've experienced. And the reason why is because the normal flow of business that I see as far as peaks and lows, it's like a wave. Maybe you call it a sine wave. I don't know, but like it peaks around this time of year, December and the holidays, and then January is actually pretty decent, and then it slowly goes down until we hit a bottom in about April, May. And then as school gets out, then it peaks back up in the summertime, and then when school gets back in, it drops, and then it climbs back up from there until December. And so that's the normal average pattern of business that I've seen for most years. Now, of course, that does not apply to every single arcade out there. That's just for myself. If an arcade was located in, say, a tourist town, then their business is going to be tied directly to what tourism is like in that area. And so it's like if you're in a ski town, then you're going to see most in your business in the wintertime. Or if you're like on a beach, then probably the summertime, something like that. But it's not necessarily going to follow the same pattern. But I am inside of a mall, and so I'm not on my own independent location, and that's just the pattern that I see, where when the mall is busy, I am busy. When the mall's dead, I am dead. That's just pretty much how it goes. And of course, other malls may have different effects that they see as well. But I did reach out to some other operators, and I'll talk about them in just a second. I'll let you read their comments there while I continue to explain why last year was so weird for me. Is that it peaked in the winter time, as it normally does, but then when it slid down and hit its normal bottom around April and May, it just stayed there, with excepting a blip in July. It just pretty much stayed there, and in fact it was kind of a slower decline. The weirdest and most concerning thing for me was how in November was my worst month of the year last year, and that is something that I've never ever seen happen. Like, November's usually one of the best months of the year, but for some bizarre reason it was the worst, and so worse than September, worse than April or May, and I'm still a little bit at a loss to explain that. I mean, some of it might be tied to movies, as I do explain in the blog post here. There's a lot of factors that affect the economy, and one of the things that affects me in particular here is movies and their performance. And you can find a lot of articles, a lot of different YouTubers that have talked about how Hollywood really stunk last year, and there was a lot of big box office flops, and just people are also just don't seem to be going out to theaters as much as they used to. Let me take care of one quick thing right here, and then I'll continue on that thought.
You don't have to stop for me.
You're fine. I just got to get this turned off, at least. But yeah, so I have a movie theater that's just about 10 shops down from me, and they don't have an arcade on their premises. And so generally speaking, since they opened back in 2012, so it's been a little over a decade now, and of course outside of 2020 itself, I've seen my performance also tied a lot to movie theater releases. Now that does somewhat reflect that wave that I mentioned before, not completely, but obviously in the summertime is when you get all your big blockbuster releases, and then at the end of the year they also generally put out some what should be blockbusters. But as Peter Parker mentions in the chat, I mean, Disney had just one flop after the other, and the only reason they can handle that is because they were such a huge company to begin with. But I saw something like they lost between 1.3 to 1.5 billion dollars on their movies last year, and that's just crazy. And now when it comes to, or sorry, let me hold a thought again real quick. Got to count some tokens. But when it comes to movie theaters and their performance, one thing that I point out in this blog post, 181, is that what I've seen people in recent years, particularly after the pandemic, but also a little bit before the pandemic happened. Hi.
You turn on that game.
Which one? I need to know specifically. Walking Dead? Okay, sure. One moment. Be right back. I need to find a companion to stream with so that when I need to go do this, somebody else can take over the stream, and that's not just blank. But that, as I was saying, with theaters, I cringe when I read these stories where people are saying theaters should die, or like there's some movie critics that I like watching, Red Letter Media, where they're constantly dunking on theaters and the theater experience. And I get it; it's not all positives, but one of the positives that theaters have that perhaps your Wall Street investors and economists don't really care about, but somebody like me cares about, is that movie theaters do help small businesses. Like there's always a bunch of small businesses around a movie theater. Arcades are one of them, but there's others too, restaurants and things. Of course, inside of a mall, I mean, it's obviously what they call an anchor store, where it's essentially bringing in a lot of business to the mall that otherwise wouldn't come here. But in other places, other situations where there's a movie theater around, there's always some small businesses, and they always get a benefit when the movie theater's doing well, they're doing well. And so when you see stuff like Shop Local and stuff like that, it's like going to a movie theater, it's helping other small businesses, as long as you're going and patronizing those businesses around and not just going to the theaters and then leaving. Now, I get it. Not everybody does go and do things other than movies afterwards, and movies have become really expensive to go out and watch. But still, there is an effect that's generally positive, but it also can be negative, just depending on how movie theaters perform. And so I don't want to see the movie theater business die out because that will affect a lot of arcades and a lot of other small businesses too that don't necessarily have anything to do with entertainment. To the question in the chat, is arcade ownership industry still considered a cash system? It depends. Like I'm still using tokens, and so it can be cash heavy, but it's obviously become a lot more card heavy, or like Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, that sort of stuff over the years. But a lot of arcades have converted over to card systems, and so I guess some would say that's cashless. I mean, I'm pretty sure these card systems have kiosks that will still take cash if that's what you want to do and buy your cards with cash. But that is something that I want to do in the future. It's just I still need to dig out of the debt that I have accumulated over the past few years, particularly starting with the pandemic, just to stay in business. And so I guess in a sense, the arcade industry is still pretty cash heavy because there's a lot of what are called routes, or street locations out there. And so these would be places where you could find maybe not even an arcade game, but like a crane machine or what they call bulk vending. Bulk vending machines are just little prize machines that you generally put, say, quarters into to buy a little prize. And so lots of grocery stores have bulk vending machines or as well as crane machines near their entrances. And so you have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of locations out there which are considered street locations that are very cash heavy in that regard. But there's also other types of routes or locations that would be considered streets, which could have arcade games or pinball. Movie theater lobbies, I think, are sometimes considered in that realm. Any place that has a waiting room, like some restaurants do have a little arcade or things like that near the front entrance. Gas stations, convenience stores, rest stops. And so there's lots of different places out there which may not be categorized themselves as an arcade, but they'll have some arcade games in them, and that's a street location. And so in that sense, since there's a lot more of those than anything else, those would be still cash heavy. But the FEC market and standalone arcades, those are converting much more over to cashless. And so one more second here. So speaking of cash or harder currency, as I mentioned, I use tokens, and so that would be, I still do that. I still trade quarters for tokens, but yeah. So hopefully 2024 is better in this regard, but at least so far I haven't heard much about it. I saw another reviewer that I've been watching who was talking about, or a movie critic that I watched, where they were doing a preview of the 2024 films, and I didn't get a chance to really watch it, but just from their thumbnail, it mentioned how it's going to be another year of sequels and superhero movies and reboots and things like that. And it's just like, seems like a lot of the people in Hollywood just aren't learning their lesson, or they're not adapting fast enough. I mean, it does take time, of course, to produce a big movie and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of money into it, but it just takes time, and it's a slow moving sort of thing. But also, that's not the only factor that plays into things. I mean, that's one that plays into mine, but there's so many other things, and I list those out. When it comes to the economy at large, there's things like unemployment, labor force participation rates, inflation, interest rates, retail sales data, stock market performance, the trade balance and deficit, consumer debt, regulatory and tax environments. Like it being the first of the year, pretty much every state has new laws that go into effect, and so some of them might be good, some of them might be bad, and those can all have an effect on local economies depending on how they shake out. And there was also the strike that delayed some things too, and so it's just like who knows exactly how it'll go. But I mean, in me watching all these sorts of numbers, or at least some of them, I mean, there's a lot of mixed indicators as to where the economy's headed this year. And so obviously when it comes to entertainment, if people are having less money in their pockets, then the last thing that they're going to be thinking about is going out and having fun at like an arcade. They need to make sure that things like rent and food and all that stuff are paid for first before they worry about having fun. And so that if there's a lot of belt tightening amongst consumers, then that's where it can affect a business, especially a foot traffic heavy business like arcades. But I know I'm not the only one that's been seeing some effects, as I've had this graphic up here. So there's a Facebook group where people who operate FECs get together and talk shop pretty much, and I asked the question, how was 2023 for you? And so like this one here said that they were up for 2023 but seeing a sudden downturn in the fourth quarter. this one said up by 7%. Then this one, costs are up, but numbers are slightly lower than last year. This one was down 20 to 30%. Numbers were higher this year, but we don't have good projections for next year. Costs are going to skyrocket between staff, insurance, electricity. And so, yeah, there's just all these factors that go into the success of an industry and such that make it difficult to predict. I mean, you can kind of see the trend of where things are headed. And like I said, a lot of it does seem to be mixed. And so, but there also seems to be more negative than positives. One second. Here you go.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. So I hope that makes sense as far as economics and where they go and where the state of the industry is. And now we're going to get into games that are in the arcade industry, and there will still be some stuff about where the arcade industry is headed this year as far as what games we're going to start seeing, what games were released last year. I mean, generally speaking, arcade games, they're on the market for at least a few years. Now, if they're total duds, then they may go off the market before the year is out. 287. But some games which are very successful can be on the market for a very long time. In fact, Mario Kart Arcade GP DX, I was told at the IAPA trade show event that happened a couple months ago that Bandai Namco has orders for Mario Karts all the way through the end of this year. Well, over 1,000 units are on order. And with that being the case, I mean, that's a game that came out in 2013. And so it's one of the longest in production arcade games in history. The only other ones that have been that were manufactured for as long or possibly longer was Aliens Extermination by Global VR. Was done like between 2006 and I think 2019. Might have even been 2020. But yeah, when it comes to a new Mario Kart, I asked them about that, and it's hard for Namco to say, like they didn't really confirm or deny anything. I got the sense that they would like to, but at the same time, since the game is still selling so incredibly well, it's kind of like, why should we release a new Mario Kart? Now, granted, there is all that content that was released on the Japanese version of Mario Kart that wasn't released here in the States, which I think it would be great for them to offer that as an upgrade kit. But I don't know. It's hard to say where Japan is. Sometimes the decisions they make are, well, I mean, they're the ones that make the final decision, final call on those things. And so I don't personally know the person who makes that decision at Bandai Namco. Hi. Yes, yes. There you go. If there's something that's off that you want to play, let me know. I can turn it on for you. Yes. So yeah, there might not be a new Mario Kart for another few years. I guess if people stopped playing Mario Kart at arcades and arcade operators stopped buying it, then they might want to change that. But at the same time, it's like you do want people to play your games and stuff. So. Yeah, I mean that would make sense to put it off. I mean, I did consider getting Mario Kart a few years back, and I probably should have in retrospect, but I bought Maximum Tune 5 instead. And as I'll get into when I start sharing numbers from my top 5 games last year, you'll see that was still a good call, but I might have done even better with Mario Kart. And to Peter Parker's comment about EXA, when I get into the 2024 stuff, EXA actually has quite a few games that will fit the fighting genre. And so, yeah, we'll get to that. But let me scroll down here. Oh yeah, I forgot. So there was quite a few trade shows. I mean, the trade show circuit's back in action. It was dead for a while, obviously with 2020, and through 2021 it was held back quite a bit. But last year felt absolutely the same as it used to. And IAPA itself did see record numbers, so higher than 2019, which had been the previous record. And there's also Amusement Expo. And so just really quick, as far as trade shows that are coming up, so this month, I believe there should be EAG in London, which will be like a much smaller IAPA, but the people will see the latest versions of Sega's games, like the Apex Rebels racing game that I filmed at IAPA. And then, of course, any new software for Godzilla Kaiju Wars VR. And as Arcade Z just mentioned, that Godzilla VR has been testing at Dave & Buster's in Addison. And so that's, again, we'll get into all that here very shortly. But, yeah, there are a few trade shows. So EAG in London, I believe this month. I should have looked up the dates prior to see when that's happening. There is Amusement Expo in Las Vegas in March, and so I should be going to that one. There's Midwest Gaming Classic, which I've never been to. I've always heard about it. I wanted to go to Free Play Florida as well, but I couldn't stick around in Florida that long, unfortunately. But Midwest Gaming Classic, so with that advertiser that I mentioned who's going to be advertising on the site, Joe at Indie Arcade Wave, he's putting together essentially an indie arcade gaming booth, and there's going to be a lot of newer indie games at Midwest Gaming Classic, and including the new Food Fight by Atari, and by them and Atari. And so that's going to be interesting. I'm going to see if I can find a way to make it to both Midwest Gaming Classic and Amusement Expo. I haven't gone to Midwest Gaming Classic because it always is very, very close to the Vegas show, and I'm just generally not able to travel that much. And so, but we'll see if I can find a way to make it work. But Ted in the chat is mentioning that EAG is less attraction focused. It does have some gambling stuff. In a way, EAG is very similar to Amusement Expo that I was just talking about. As Amusement Expo as well has also been, because the amount of business in the arcade is what it is, it's not like E3 size. Like IAPA, it has a lot of stuff from the theme parks and attractions industry, and so you have all these inflatables, you have stuff about roller coasters and dark rides, and all this stuff to support theme parks, and so a lot of the trade show floor is taken up by that. Now, the amount that is taken up by the arcade side is impressive, but it's still much smaller than that whole thing. And so both EAG and Amusement Expo are smaller just because they are more arcade focused, but both trade organizations have been focusing more on bringing in some other stuff. And so Amusement Expo's had some gambling stuff, as Ted mentioned. EAG does as well. Another thing that I've seen Amusement Expo focusing on is laser tag, although that hasn't really added much because they don't like set up in a laser tag arena or anything. It's just two people representing a laser tag company that generally look pretty bored anytime I visit them. And sorry, I'm just having a drink here to wet my whistle. But also, Amusement Expo has been putting a stronger focus on VR as well, and we'll see how that shakes out. But as usual, I definitely will be at Amusement Expo, be at IAPA 2024. A little weird to say that already, but yeah, like I said, if I can, I'll try and get to something else like Midwest Gaming Classic. I went to California Extreme a few years ago, back in 2018. That was really cool. It's just like I said, I can't spend all my time traveling, unfortunately. But let's, with trade shows come new games, and let's talk about the games that were released in 2023. And so on the Arcade Heroes website, I guess as one announcement, I did just launch the arcade and pinball releases page for 2024. Thank you. For 2024. But on this page, you can go back to any of the years where I've been tracking releases, which have been since 2009. I guess I should do some research and fill in 2008 and 2007 at some point. But if you go to 2023, let's cover those releases, and then we'll get into 2024. And so with any of these pages, if you click on these tabs, it'll show you the different regions like Asia, which is more focused on Japan, Europe, redemption games. And when the redemption tab is mainly for games that are only video redemption, so they don't have an amusement game mode. And then everything else like VR systems and other oddities like ice cold beer. But let's see. So starting at the top of the list, not going by month, but just by alphabetized listings, we have Arcana Heart 3 Love Max 6 stars extend, which is a mouthful. But I think this generally just goes by Arcana Heart 3 Extend. And I believe this was the last game released of the year last year, and that because it was released on Christmas. Hi, how's it going? And this is a fighting game, anime, all-girl fighting game. And so Arcana Heart, obviously, since it's on number 3, it's been around for a while. I don't know all the details of Arcana Heart as far as the series goes and any other editions that were released out there. But this is available worldwide. That's something I want to stress on anything that goes to the Exa Arcadia system. If you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like a modern Neo Geo MVS, and so pretty much anybody anywhere that has an Exa system can buy one of these games. And there are some collectors that buy them, but there are locations that have them. I'm one location that happens to have 2 of them, and so that this allows, like, say, brand new fighting games and other types of games that other bigger manufacturers may not like to tackle, like fighting games or shoot 'em ups and such. But Arcana Heart 3 just came out, and I did get to play that at IAPA. I'm not good at it. It seems to have a very deep fighting system, and it has all this stuff about different arcanas that you can choose for your characters. It's like, I have absolutely no idea, what choosing this arcana over that one and with this character over that character has an effect on things. Oh, but I just spilled. But if you're into a deeper fighting game and one with all anime girls, then that one probably fits the bill. Axel City 2, another one for the Exa Arcadia, and I had a lot of people asking me about this one over the years because it was announced like 2018, I think it was, and the first Axel City, I don't know how common that one is. I think it was only available on very early Windows systems, but it just didn't seem to have a lot of reach out there. But there was an arcade in Japan that posted a tweet that stated that Axel City 2 was making more than Street Fighter 6 arcade was. And that was pretty surprising, given that Axel City 2 wouldn't have the name of Street Fighter. But it is exclusive to arcades, this particular version. As you can see, it has a huge roster. It's almost like King of Fighters in the sense that it just has this enormous roster, but everything's hand-drawn, and I don't know anything really about the story, even though I played the game a couple of times. But if you want something that's kind of like Street Fighter 2, just with an enormous character roster, this fits the bill pretty well. And I've thought about maybe grabbing that. There was Batsugun Exa label, so the legendary Batsugun by Toa Plan came back with some content enhancements, game enhancements. I think there's an Exa game mode that's exclusive to it, but it also has, if I'm recalling correctly, the original arcade JAMA release as well as the Saturn version built into that. And so it's kind of like a director's cut, and but this particular version is only available in arcades. I'm not sure how many arcades out there have grabbed this particular one. If you go over to Arcade Belgium, they're a great site. They're somewhat European focused, but also Japan focused. They also sell some, or they work with a seller of our Exa systems, but I think they might have one. Or they also have an Exa Arcadia map where it tracks locations and the games that they have there. So that's a good one to check. Big Buck Hunter Reloaded update with Walking Dead, which I did get just a couple weeks ago. I did try to record, well, I did record a full playthrough of The Walking Dead on that, but for some reason in the past when I recorded it, the audio went through HDMI, and so I just assumed that the same thing was still in place. But for some reason it did not record it now, and so I need to tie my audio in directly to the computer, which is normally what I have to do, but I just didn't realize it. I should have tested it beforehand, so that was my bad. But I'll get that up, so I will have another full capture video of The Walking Dead coming soon. But to note, there are some minute differences from what I could tell, mainly the text, but also just the way that it feels, because you're using this shotgun, but you're still firing arrows. I thought they might change it to shotgun shots, but it's still arrow-based there. But, yeah, if Street Fighter 6 was arcade exclusive, I know it would do well. I've told this story a dozen times, but I had Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, and I got it about a month and a half before the home console version came out, and in that month and a half I've never had a game that earned as much as it did. But the day that it came out on the 360 and I think the PS3, it died, and I never recouped my investment from that, but it was pretty amazing just how well it did when it was exclusive. And yes, if you show up here and want to say what's up, that's cool. Just be nice. Please be nice. Next up is Big Shot, and this came out in June, and this is by Jet Games. I should change it from Jenison Entertainment Games to Jet Games, there was some sort of corporate changes there, and so that's what they're known as. But they're focusing more on video games, not just video redemption or just redemption pieces. I posted some videos about this one. And it's really fun. It's a shooting gallery game. It uses a very realistic pistol. And then, of course, this year, as I'll get into, they're going to release one called Mega Shot, which is really cool. But I like the direction that this Big Shot's going, or has gone into. And yes, I agree, P. Haas, that it is ridiculous that they called it Arcade Edition or Type Arcade, because there's really no difference. Or the differences are just too minute to really care. And from what I've heard, like Street Fighter V did not do that well in Japanese arcades on the arcade version. I don't know how well it did for round one, because as far as I'm aware, every round one USA had Street Fighter V Type Arcade. I could be wrong on that. There might be a few locations that didn't have it. No clue what the numbers are on that, but yeah, that would be interesting to find out if it did really well or if it just performed meh or not. And Happy New Year to you, MKF30. And yeah, it'd be cool if we did get a Mortal Kombat arcade game. I've talked to a few people over the years who have wanted to make one happen. The problem is the licensing, is that NetherRealms or Warner Brothers Games wants such an enormous amount on the licensing for that it just makes it untenable. I mean, part of the problem with the Street Fighter games or like Tekken 7 and others is just that the amount that the companies want for the machine is just frankly ridiculous. It makes little to no sense on it, particularly where the game is not exclusive to arcades. Now, if it was guaranteed, like that version was going to be exclusive with, say, exclusive characters and exclusive stages and some other changes that the console versions wouldn't have, then I think it would be easier to justify. Because, like I said, with Street Fighter 4, when I did have it exclusive, it performed incredibly well. It's just that the reality is that most Street Fighter or Tekken players or whatever other players, if they can get it at home, that's their preference. And yes, it is cooler in some cases to play at the arcade, with, say, a stranger or somebody's right there as opposed to playing online. But for a vast majority of consumers, they don't care. They're fine with playing it online and with the little problems that come with that. And so, yeah, that's the realm that Mortal Kombat falls into, unfortunately, is that it would probably cost well over $10,000 to get a new Mortal Kombat cabinet, and probably more like 15 to 20,000. And would that make any money, especially if it's no different from the home version? Probably not. And that would just mean it's a failed investment. And for anybody who has to spend that kind of money, if you're going to spend $20,000, you want to know that you're getting that back within a reasonable amount of time, as opposed to just taking it on the chins for say the community or something. Yeah, I would still love it if there could be a way that Mortal Kombat could find its way back into the arcades, because in my humble opinion, games like Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, they started in the arcade, so that's where they belong. But things have changed, and the demand for them at home has outweighed the demand for them in arcades. But again, as we'll get into, there's X Arcadia that's putting fighting games out at least. Back onto the list, we have Bullseye Crackshot, which, if you missed the video that I did about this, I think it was last week, comparing these different shooting gallery style games to each other, that's where you can get more details on these, like Bullseye Crackshot and Big Shot. Big Shot you might have seen out there. Bullseye probably not, because it just started shipping a few weeks ago, but I guess it depends on the arcade you're at. Hi, how's it going?
Hi, what's up?
Oh, not much.
I'll let you finish your life
Oh, no, you're fine. If you got any questions, let me know. I can pause it.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. We got Dead Heat Unleashed by Bandai Namco Amusements, and so fans of Maximum Tune, in a way, this is like Maximum Tune 6.5. I didn't get any confirmation of this, but my hunch is that the same engine that Dead Heat Unleashed uses is what's going to be used in Maximum Tune 7. I did hear from an insider in Japan that that Maximum Tune 7 was supposed to have been announced, but the price on it was so astronomical that operators there told them to take a hike. And so Namco, because it's the 20th anniversary of Maximum Tune this year, they need something. That's where they came up with 6RR Plus, just kind of as a stopgap until they could, I guess, reconfigure 7 so that it's not so ridiculous. Like, I was astounded when I heard the price, how much they wanted for it. Hi. Here you go. Thank you. So yeah, if you want a casual Maximum Tune fix, go with Dead Heat Unleashed. There's also, back on the X Arcadia, something that's not a fighter or a shoot 'em up, and it's Donut Dodo Do. And I did grab this game. If you haven't played it, or seen it, there is a console version out there, but this one adds an extra stage. It adds a second character, and you can play 2 players at the same time. And it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like Donkey Kong and Pac-Man and the original Mario Brothers all kind of mixed into one. And I actually have a Krispy Kreme, I can't find it now, where did it go? But I bought a Krispy Kreme gift card to give away for somebody that could get a high score on Donut Dodo Do. But so far, no takers on it yet. So that came out in May. We have Draken's Realm Keepers by Adrenaline Amusements, which came out in November. And what's interesting about this one is, even though it's a light gun game, it uses a motion base, and the way that it plays is basically like the Typhoon or the Virtual Rabbids, in that it's like a virtual roller coaster, but you can shoot stuff on it. Now, granted, virtual roller coasters are sort of like on-rail. I mean, they are on rails, on-rail roller coasters, of course. But yeah, this one's just a little more interactive. It's just, unfortunately, there's no leaderboards in Draken's. There's no way to die in it either. So what it does is something a little interesting, in that when you reach the boss, that's when it requires you to pay for your next credit. But if you do, you'll be able to finish the boss and play through the next level. And so when you reach the next boss, that's when you have to pay again. And so I guess that has worked. Yeah, Dream Raiders would be a good example of that. I wholeheartedly agree on that one, Ted. Where yeah, they are very similar in concept. I mean, Draken's looks better. It also uses a LED screen, which is very interesting. That's why it's a square shape, because it's using these micro LEDs instead of just a TV on there, and so that helps it stand out a little bit too. The sound on it's really good and everything, but the price on them was somewhere around $35,000, and so not something that I'm grabbing anytime soon. Also, speaking of Sega, we have Drone Racing Genesis, which came out in February, so it's almost been out for a year now. And that's where you fly drones around a course. I like the graphics on this one, and interesting enough, it seems to share some elements or some assets from Dream Raiders, since you mentioned that one. I think particularly on the city level. But obviously upgraded and up-resed from where they were. Perhaps the most impressive thing about this cabinet are the LED effects that it has. Those are just really cool. It's just last time I played it, the calibration did seem a little off on the joystick, so I'm not sure if that had been enhanced. But I didn't play it at this past IAPA. I played it at the IAPA where it was introduced 2022, so I don't know how much it might have changed. Another fighter for the X Arcadia is Dynamite Bomb, and this is one that also is exclusive to the platform. And this one only has 10 fighters on it, but it is 2D art, and I believe it has a somewhat deep fighting system, but I'm not an expert on those things, and so I don't know how deep it might be, but deeper than, say, Street Fighter 2. From what I recall hearing, is this one is similar to, say, Guilty Gear. And so, kind of like Guilty Gear without the Guilty Gear name, perhaps. Here's the first pinball machine on our list. Let me know if the sound from Maximum Tune's bleeding over. We have Elton John by Jersey Jack Pinball, which came out in October. And first time I got to see this one was at IAPA, and very impressive looking game. But as I mentioned in some videos last year, unfortunately, where pinball's price has gotten to this extreme point, I'm just not looking at getting any pinballs anytime soon, because they're all just too expensive for how little they earn. Now, granted, it does depend on what location you have, as to, that does matter. Having them in a bar arcade, it makes more sense. They make more money in that situation than a place like mine. But not every place can be a bar arcade. And also in pinball, we have Elvira House of Horrors Blood Red Kiss Edition, which unfortunately was not at IAPA, which I wish it was. Would have been cool to see, because they did this mostly in black and white, or black, white, and red. And kind of like the Munsters pinball, the premium edition pinball, where they did it in black and white to mimic the old TV show. And yes, Maximum Tunes the Maximum Tune soundtrack is awesome. So at least we have that in the background, and I don't think the YouTube algorithm will ding me for that. But sometimes I have been dinged in the past for some music you can barely hear in something that I recorded, which is idiotic. But let's see, we got Enter the Gungeon, House of the Gun Dead, which I actually have one of those sitting right here. It did okay since I got it, but it could be better. The main problem that I've had with it are the guns, and these use Sinden guns, and frankly, I wish they would have used something else, or either worked with Sinden or worked with Suzo Hap to develop a different gun that could withstand the arcade pressures. But it's just, I've had so many instances where the guns have not been working, or the calibration suddenly goes out, where it's just that's the frustrating thing about it. But I do have not a live stream, sorry, but I do have a capture of the full game of House of the Gun Dead that you can watch on my channel, and it worked fine there. And it is a cool game. I really like the different take that it has. I'd say like dungeon exploring with a light gun is pretty cool. But yeah, I would be happy if they were able to offer a replacement, like a Suzo Hap replacement for the guns, just something else. But that might be too difficult to do, since the game was developed using those from the ground up. But yeah, they don't hold up as well in the commercial space as they really should. And so, but to Griffin Aerotech's credit, the developer, they've been very attentive. They're very quick to help me out if there is an issue. They've been also releasing some software updates, which have also corrected some issues. So, like, the game is more stable than when I first got it. It's just when I first got it, it had so many problems that it didn't really earn very well. And there were people who knew the name, but they would come and try and play it. It wouldn't work, and then they might not come back. Now, I have had some people who call me up and is like, hey, is it working? It's just when you buy a brand new game, you don't want to have to be getting calls or people are trying to find out if a game's working or not. But at the same time, this is an independently developed game, and so I cut some leeway for that. But again, I wouldn't mind it if they are able to offer, say, a gun update in the future. This one I thought about putting into the limited release category. I don't know how many of these are out there, but this is the Eye of Typhoon, which was originally developed by Viacom. And I think it was also released on the 3DO way back in the day. But somebody ported it to the Neo Geo MVS and released some cartridges. They call it Tsunami Edition. I haven't really seen much about it. There is one channel out there that has some footage of the Neo Geo version, but pretty limited release, I would believe. We have the standard version of Fast and Furious Arcade, so if you're an arcade operator like me and you don't have the space or you don't have the $25,000 per cabinet that you want to spend on the deluxe version, you can instead spend $13,000-ish on the standard version. And so I guess if my Cruisin' USA still wasn't doing fine, then maybe I'd consider that. But that is one thing that when Fast and Furious Deluxe first came out and people were saying, well, what about a standard version? Raw Thrills was saying, well, you could just get Cruisin' Blast because it was very similar in pretty much the same kind of game. We had Foo Fighters by Stern, released at the very end of February 28th. I wonder if anybody will try and release something on February 29th this year. That would be fun since it is leap year. But Foo Fighters, I got to play that one, and it's fun, especially if you like the Foo Fighters themselves. I remember as a teenager, I have one or two of their CDs still in my collection. And so it's a fun game. I think it was designed by Jack Danger, if I recall correctly. And but I don't know how well it's done on location out there. Also, there's Galactic Tank Force by American Pinball. And I did notice some differences in how that played between the version I played at Amusement Expo earlier in the year and the version I played at IAPA. It did seem to be a little bit easier to play at IAPA than the Amusement Expo version, but that might have just been me. I'm not really, really great at pinball. I'm okay. So it just might have been that. But what I like about this game is it has a lot of humor built into it. I mean, most pinball machines do have some sense of humor built into them, but this one goes a little bit further with it. Speaking of Mortal Kombat, this has... her name is escaping me. She played Sonya Blade, I think, in Mortal Kombat 1 and 3. She was the actress who was digitized in those games. But she lends her voice talents as the evil queen in this game where you're trying to stop the aliens from cow-napping the cows from Earth or the moon or something like that. The story is a little bit nonsensical, which I think is on purpose. It's kind of like a retro 1950s sci-fi flick. But that game was released in March. And I've not seen any of the limited editions out there that are supposed to look like a tank, just this standard version. And then we also have The Godfather 50th Anniversary by Jersey Jack Pinball, which was released in March. And first time I got to play it was at IAPA, and I enjoyed it. I have to admit, I've actually never seen any of the full Godfather movies. But no, it wasn't Elizabeth. It was something else like Carrie, I think, or it starts with a K, her name. Sorry, I'm back on The Godfather. I really did enjoy this game. You get to pick which gang or cartel you're supposed to be a part of, and then you work from there and work your way up the ladder and such. But Carrie Hoskins, that's right. Thank you. And so, yeah, The Godfather, it's a fun game. But yeah, going back really quick to Galactic Tank Force, if you want to have Carrie Hoskins interacting with you, that play that pinball machine. In a way, it's maybe it could be considered in the Mortal Kombat universe. Next up is Golden Tee PGA Tour 2023-2024. This was released in July, but I actually didn't know about its release until like a month or two afterwards. Usually Incredible Technologies does a lot of promotion of these new releases, but it was very low-key this last time, and so I missed out on that, and I didn't really catch what differences there are on this version from the other one. But it follows the long trend since like 2007, where every single year there's been a Golden Tee update. So if you're into Golden Tee, there's always something new. Will we get a War Gods sequel? Not that I know of. So anything that was released by Atari Games from 1984 through 2001, I think it was, and anything released by Williams Electronics or Midway, I don't know why I spaced on that for a moment, that's all owned by Warner Brothers Discovery right now. And I don't even know if anybody at Warner really knows that they have all of that IP under their belt. Like, they obviously know they have Mortal Kombat, but that's only because of NetherRealm Studios. But everything else, like if you've noticed that Warner Brothers has not brought back, say, Paperboy and War Gods or Primal Rage or any of those games, Hydro Thunder and such, it's because it's under Warner's control. And like I said, they just don't. I guess Mortal Kombat's their cash cow, so why should they bother with anything else? It might be their mode of thinking. I don't know. Perhaps if an arcade fan gets hired by Warner Brothers Discovery or Warner Brothers Games, then they can make some strides there, perhaps. Halo Fireteam Raven, I call this the Assault model because it has a replica of the Assault rifle from the Halo games on it, but they just call it the 4-player tethered model. You guys can use my name if anybody from Raw Thrills is watching. I mean, I don't care. It sounds cooler to me, but maybe it's because of the assault word is too violent. I don't know. But that's an upright version of the 4-player Halo Fireteam Raven game, which first came out in 2018. Here's a new racing game from Sega Amusements, but the software developer is called Baohui, I think it is. And it's basically Arctic Thunder, but new. And so if you're into Arctic Thunder, find a Hypercross, and you got that. But it has a lot of different character customization options to it. It has a QR code sharing system. I liked it. And I actually do think I found an extra video of it for my Apple when I was looking through all my stuff for the Games of 2023 video that I'm going to try and get posted this week. So I may post this separate Hypercross video here soon. Yeah, I was gonna say I could swear I saw an IGS logo on there too, and it feels like and looks like an IGS game. But I just don't know the depth of development. I mean, it's possible that IGS developed the software and then this company Baohui, who I believe is Chinese, developed the hardware, and then Sega's just selling it with their name on it. That might be the case. But I like the motion on it, and especially the LEDs on the treads were pretty cool. James Bond 007 60th Anniversary Edition was announced on January 3rd last year, and from what I am hearing, there are rumors that Stern is going to announce Jaws here this week, so possibly tomorrow or Wednesday, but usually it seems like Stern does their announcements on Tuesdays, Mondays or Tuesdays, so that might be coming, but back on James Bond, this 60th Anniversary Edition is significantly different than the other versions of the game that were out there. It had some real dials in the back, like physical dials. So I did get to see this at the Pinball Hall of Fame when I was in Vegas last summer, and didn't get a lot of time to play it, but it looked cool, and it sounded like a James Bond game. Here's one that I don't know if I'll ever come across, and that's Jim Henson's Labyrinth. It's by a new company called Barrels of Fun. but it's based on the David Bowie Labyrinth movie. And everything that I've seen about it, it looks good. I just don't know how many locations out there are going to be grabbing one of these. For the most part, I assume it'll be in collections as opposed to commercial locations. That was released in October, and we'll see if they got something else this year. Jurassic Park 30th Anniversary Edition came out in August, and that was just to celebrate, the obvious there. I didn't catch what else might have been really different about that one, though. I do have a Jurassic Park Pro sitting over here, and it does decently well. Looney Tunes Pinball was announced, I think it was released in December. Couldn't confirm that, but there's videos on that from Spooky Pinball. Looks like a lot of fun. I love the theme and the way that they worked the art and the clips into it. Unfortunately, they're using the classic clips, not the newer stuff that nobody cares about. But this one is limited to only 888 units. I may need to put Spooky's stuff under limited releases. We had NFS Heat Takedown released. The standard version came out in February, and then the deluxe version came out in April. If you haven't played that, it's a solid racing, well, not really racing, it's a kind of a police chase game, as NFS games have become known for. You can run into your opponent's cars. The best thing about this game is just, since it was converted from the console game, it looks fantastic. But it is a different game. There is a reason why I also call it arcade exclusive, because it is different from NFS Heat. Just the gameplay is much more focused, much more arcade-like. It has some voice acting that the console version doesn't have, and so overall it's a cool game, and it has the LED marquee. And so with Fast and Furious, now everybody wants to do 2 screens instead of 1, but instead of doing 2 monitors, most have just done this LED marquee instead, which I'm fine with, just because really, does the second screen add much to the game? Nah, but it is nice to have some sort of interactive display if you're standing by. Another racer that's kind of a low-key release is Parkour Motor 2, and this was developed by a Chinese company called Ace Amusement and sold here in the States by Amusement Source International. It's basically like Superbikes. Superbikes 2 looks nicer, but the way it plays is very similar. But it does have a motion base. As I mentioned on the Arcade Heroes Discord, I don't know that having motion bases on motorcycle games really adds that much to it, since you already are on the swivel bike, but most of them are doing that nowadays. But if you don't want to spend the money on, say, Asphalt Moto Blitz DX, which comes out this month from LAI Games, this Parkour Motor, I think it's somewhere around $15,000 they were saying for the pair as a twin cabinet, so it's very competitively priced. Alex, I unfortunately don't have a lot of pricing. Like, I have asked for the manufacturer suggested retail pricing on a lot of these, but sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't, or most of the time I don't. I'm told to talk to a distributor. At least for some of the later releases that have come out, I tried, but everybody's been on vacation. As I recall, NFS Heat Takedown was $16,000 per cabinet on the standard, but then something like $23,000 on the deluxe. But need to confirm with the distributor on that one. Nothing on order yet, no. I mentioned this earlier in the stream, but I've got too much debt that I accumulated from my second location, from the pandemic, trying to stay open and all that. And so right now I'm just focused on paying off my debt as best I can. I'm going to try and get 1 or 2 of these knocked out this year, and then that will allow me to get something else. I mean, there always could be something else that pops up that is just an opportune moment. Or if I sell something else off, then I could use that money to, buy something else. Like, I might trade out a pinball machine or 2 for another pin. That's the only place where I see myself getting a new pinball machine, is just doing a straight across trade or a trade plus cash. I wouldn't mind Pulp Fiction, which just came out in November, because funny enough, even though it was just released, it was designed to be more like an 80s pinball machine, but it's 80s, but at the same time it has some modern stuff. Like it has all these 3D sculpted toys, and it has the voiceovers integrated into it really well. And so it doesn't look, it plays like an 80s pinball machine, but it doesn't look like one exactly. It's kind of weird on that one, but it's cool, especially if you're a fan of Pulp Fiction, or even if you're not. It's just a fun game from what my experience. And that is also the first pinball machine by Play Mechanics, who developed, they're part of Raw Thrills and such. We have Pump It Up Phoenix, 2023 Phoenix. That was released by Andamiro on August 14th. It was released earlier in Korea. I think it was on July 4th, which was kind of amusing that it was released in Korea on July 4th, not the United States. Not on the U.S. Independence Day. But I did get to see this at IAPA. Didn't get to play it. I was, I guess, too busy. But when I see this at Amusement Expo, if there's anything that any Pump fan wants me to film out there, I can. I guess some wanted me to film the basic mode and how that works. But when I asked last time if you want me to film anything, nobody said anything until afterwards. And so I kind of spaced it out. Too much to film. Here's another one that probably belongs in limited releases, called Punny Factory 2520 by Pinball Adventures. I've not seen this one in person. I haven't really heard much talked about it, but it did come out last year in April. Have you seen one? Do you know of any locations that have one of these, or is it just a collector's item? And here's one that you might see at the right FEC, but this is, at present, the most expensive arcade game on the market, and one of the most expensive ever released, and that would be Cube by Triotech. And what makes it expensive is that it's around $100,000 every time I've asked about it, what its price is. It's right there, but it is an arcade machine. Now, why is it so expensive? Well, the company that developed this is Triotech. They're based out of, I think it's Montreal. They're in Canada, either way. That they have these XD dark rides, and so they're almost like this interactive movie theater, and you go and you play on it, and it's this big thing that you can have anywhere from 8 seats to 128 seats, and you get a light gun, your seat moves, you get wind effects, all this stuff. And so what they wanted to do was take that concept, which starts at like $250,000, and bring it down into an arcade machine. And so that's what it is. It's the XD dark ride, but in an arcade cabinet. And now the graphics on it look fantastic. I mean, they're very high quality, all Unreal Engine 5, 4K on a 100-inch screen. The guns on it are really cool. It uses D-Box motion seats. It has wind effects. And so it's a 4-player light gun game, but it has multiple games. And I think I saw a signage at IAPA saying 5 games are available for it at present, and so a multi-game, and so that's another reason where it gets, I guess, a little more makes up for it in that you get more, you have more features and stuff out of it. Are you guys wanting to play some pinball?
No, I think we're gonna play House of Nerds.
Okay. If there is something off that you want to play, just let me know. I can turn it on for you.
Thank you.
Sure. We got Shinorumi Pink Label by Last Boss 88 for the XR Arcadia. This is a scrolling shoot 'em up. Obviously, it has a lot of pink in it. I think I have a video of this, but I'm kind of struggling to think about any special features. Got a new version of Step Maniacs released, the deluxe version, and the base game had been out for a while. No, I just, because I've been streaming, I haven't been.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's.
Oh no, you're fine.
Pretty good weekend. 48.
Yeah. Overall, solid way to end the year, and December was better than November was. So, in that regard, I can't complain.
Hopefully it continues on, right?
Yeah, that's all we need.
Yep. All right.
Thanks, Paul. And then, oops, didn't mean to do that. Let's go back. Also in February, like Sega released Drone Racing Genesis, and then they released Storm Rider 2 on February 1st. And so this is also one that kind of feels a little bit like Superbikes. Did you want to play that one?
Oh, no, I was just reading.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of like a little bit like Superbikes, but instead of open circuit courses, it has closed circuit courses. It also has a motion base, the swivel seats. It comes in this twin style. This one, I think I heard $32,000 on the price. Can't remember what the price was on the Step Maniacs. 15, perhaps. Shinorubi Pink Label, I think, was $1,500. That's one nice thing that EXA can say is they have the most affordable games in the business. Of course, that doesn't include the cabinet and the game board itself. It's just for the cartridge kit. But that still all costs a lot less than, say, one of these. Let's see. Also from Spooky Pinball, that was announced last month, and I believe started shipping Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which both this and Looney Tunes share the same layout, but they use different art, and of course the rules are different and all that. They're customized towards their themes and such, but there's also a bit of video of this on Spooky Pinball's channel. If you're into humor with your pinball machines, there's also This Is Spinal Tap by Home Pin. And this is one that I would only maybe see if at the Pinball Hall of Fame. I don't know. Hard to come across because Home Pin's based out of Australia. And they have their factory, I think it's in Taiwan. But I've heard mixed reviews about the quality of these machines. Not necessarily this specific machine, but just Home Pin machines in general. Like they had Thunderbirds. I need to stop doing that. But no clue how this one plays, but I assume it's funny. Venom. When I asked on the Discord what people's games, arcade games of the year were, Venom was mentioned once or twice, and this I filmed. I think it was Josh Sharp, or it might have been Zach Sharp, playing this one at IAPA. I think it was Josh, and fun game. I didn't get a lot of time spent on it though, unfortunately, but it had a little bit of the Deadpool vibe to it, from what I recall playing. But I guess that's a question I could throw out for the chat. What was your arcade game of 2023? Wild Things, like I don't have an image of this one, just saying Wild Things, but the European release is called Wild Thing Wipeout, and that's the only image I have of it. But that was released in December, and then last but not least, we have Zombie Crisis by Nito Game, and it's distributed in the UK through JNC Sales, and here in the States through Amusement Source International. And then for limited release, I just ran the story last week of Street Fighter 6 Type Arcade has been showing up at Round 1 USA locations. I don't know if anybody else will be getting it, but definitely Round 1 USAs are getting that. Do I think all these pinball companies will survive long term? Good question. Well, I admit that I'm surprised that many have survived as long as they have. I don't know about some of these smaller operations, because like we have seen quite a few in the pinball side of things. They don't generally call them indies, they call them boutique pinball manufacturers, and there have been quite a few that have come and gone with the wind, so to speak. But there are others, like Jersey Jack Pinball seems to have established themselves very well, American Pinball as well. Spooky Pinball, they, I think, expanded their factory, I want to say last year, but they still do these limited releases and such. And so one thing that I have heard, and I think I did a video about this last year, was that the home consumer demand for pinball, it spiked in 2020 when everybody was locked down, and it hasn't really abated since then. And so that's really been driving a lot of this. Now, can the steam run out of that engine? Yeah. It could end up, just being one or two companies. But at least for the foreseeable future, pinball seems to be in a very strong position. It's just for me as a commercial operator, I really wish that all that enthusiasm for pinball would translate to earnings here, but it just hasn't. And I think that's part of the problem, in that most people who know what pinball is and would be willing to spend money on playing it at a location already have it at home, and so they're like, why do I need to go to the arcade or even the bar to play it, because I already have, say, 5-10 pinball machines. Like, pinball collectors seem to me to be a lot more serious than video arcade collectors, and they're just much more into it than I've ever met, or than I've met with most video arcade collectors. So yeah. On Goldstorm Pirates, we'll get into that in just a second. Because, I guess we're at the point now where we can start talking about games from next year, or that are coming out this year, sorry. Does everybody else need to get used to thinking that it's a new year now in 2024? So if you ever have to write dates down, you got to really think about that and not put last year on it on accident. But again, this page is live now on arcadeheroes.com, so if you want to follow along, you can. Oh yeah, on the Hot Pink Club games, some of them do have I don't know if you call it they have non-adult modes. And so like Rumble Storm, all of the nudity and stuff in that one, when I saw that one, it's been a couple of years now, the only adult stuff in that were like cutscenes, and so they did tell me that could all be removed with an option. I'm not sure though on some of the other ones, just because some of them it's so ingrained into the game, like the Splatterhouse type game, which hasn't been released yet. That's on the list here, Shakuga the Excommunication. Like that one just had so much integrated into the gameplay. I don't know how they could do it. I mean, maybe they could, like if they essentially built two games side by side, and then just had the Splatterhouse option where it's just violence instead of the nudity and such. So it depends on the game, I guess, is the best answer. But oh yeah, I'm sorry, I did forget that there were some other games to cover too. With Europe, the releases are generally reflective of the United States. There just are some additions like Airzone Deluxe and Dinosaur Air Extreme, although I guess Coastal Amusements has that one here. They're almost mirrors of each other. It's just there are certain releases that the UK gets before the United States does. Or this one, Zombie Crisis by Nito Game. Zombie Splash by Ace Amusement has not been released by anybody here, but it is distributed in the UK and Europe through UDC. For Asia, if I do have any errors on the Asian one, because I know that's very possible, please let me know and I can go back and fix that. But Asphalt Moto Blitz DX did come out in China first. This game is supposed to be coming out here in North America as well as in Europe this month through LAI Games. And so the graphics on this one are fantastic. And again, it plays like an asphalt racing game, kind of a little bit like Superbikes on this one, but you can race against cars as well as motorcycles. It has a motion base on it. Again, I don't know how much that adds to the whole experience, but it still felt fun, felt like a good motorcycle racing game. The LED effects on the tires were really cool on this one. There was Beat Mania. Is it IDX that you're supposed to say it, or double IDX? 31 Epolis by Konami that came out on October 18th. Chunithim Sun Plus and Luminous by Sega came out last year. I wouldn't expect most of the games that are released in Japan to hit the States or Europe, aside from some gray imports or, say, Round 1 USA carrying those games. There was Iketsu Tyson Rokokyo no Kikuken by Sega on November 1st, and I think that might have been released through their digital network, all.net Pros Multi. Eldora Crown Eternal Labyrinth by Konami came out on the 20th of November. There was this fighting game, Ein Eins Perfect Welt Anastasis. and that was on Nexica 2, Cross Live 2. See, there was a new Jew Beat, Beyond the Avenue in September. Common Rider Battle Gumba Legends by Bandai Namco in March. I haven't heard anything about this game since that came out, so it must not have done well. I've heard that this game has done pretty well. Mahjong Fight Girl by Konami came out back in March. There was My Deluxe Festival Plus and Deluxe Buddies by Sega. Mobile Suit Gundam Arsenal Base Linkage by Bandai Namco Amusement. And then Mobile Suit Gundam Extreme vs. 2 Overboost. Now, this series, this particular type of Gundam game is generally one of the best earning games over in the Japanese arcade scene. But I have heard that this particular one has been underperforming a little bit. There's a new Naruto arcade game that was released in China back in September, and this has been testing in the States, but I haven't heard anything about it since we heard about the test. Of course, there was Pump It Up Phoenix, which launched in Korea first. Not sure if got into Japan yet or China, but I would assume that it has. Quiz Magic Academy, a trivia game from Konami. Trivia games still work in Japan. I don't think they would work here in the States. Shanghai 4, Street Fighter Type Arcade just came out a few weeks ago, and then of course Street Fighter 3 TB Online, Team Battle Online, came to Sega's All.net Plus multi-system on the 28th. So those are Japanese games. And then for everything else, we did have Asphalt 9 Legends Arcade VR come out in June. This one is about $50,000, I believe. It ships as a pair. Although I need to ask somebody at LAI about that one again. I think it might be the $50,000 per unit, so $100,000 for the two, but I'll correct that record either way because I'm not 100% sure. Crazy Racing by VR360 Action. So this is more just a cabinet release. It does it allows you to use all sorts of racing software on it, but they do have some games that they tuned specifically for their cabinet to be used there. I'm not sure how much this one is. It might be in the $30,000 range. But this one doesn't, even though the company's called VR360 Action, this one does not use a VR headset. Ice Cold Beer Remake by Retro Arcade Remakes came out in May, and this one had a little bit of trouble getting to the production phase, but now that they've got there, later this year there's supposed to be a Zeke's Peak remake. If you're not familiar with this game, it's an electromechanical game, and you use these two joysticks to move the rod up the field, and you have a little steel ball, almost a pinball, and you have to try and get the ball into the lit holes and not into the unlit holes. And it's very easy to get into the unlit holes because they're all over the place. They're supposed to represent bubbles in the beer. And so that one's finally came out. Fun game, and there will be some other custom games that they're going to develop with that. And this is one also, as I should mention, is officially licensed from Taito. There was somebody else in Australia that was trying to make an Ice Cold Beer remake, but they did not get Taito's blessing from it. King Kong of Skull Island 2 came out in November, and this just added chapters 4 and 5, but it was considered significant enough to make it a sequel, and I have video of this on my channel. Magic's Pool by Touch Magics, which augments pool tables with projection mapping. Unfortunately, they did not have this one at the show. They had video of it in action at the show, but obviously not the same thing. MotoGP VR by Play Mechanics came out in July. And an upgrade to the old MotoGP that came out in 2015. You can play this one without the VR headset if you want, but if you prefer to have the more immersive experience, don the VR headset and go at it. Sailor's Quest VR from Unis. In a way, this was kind of them jumping onto the band, or I mean, Unis had done stuff with VR in the past, but this was a light gun game, a fixed light gun game. I almost want to say like they were able to get in there before Godzilla VR came along, because Godzilla VR isn't even out yet. But this one plays more like Dead Storm Pirates, but with VR on it. I kind of wonder if Unis will decide to do a non-VR version of this or not. SpongeBob VR Bubble Coaster by Andamiro and Rylix. Just the weird thing about these setups that you might have seen out there, because I've seen quite a few by Rylix, it's a Brazilian company, is that they do roller coaster style experiences, but there's no motion. And so it's a non-motion roller coaster sort of thing. And I guess the feeling of from the VR headset is probably what does it. But this can handle multiple types of VR headsets. Don't know that you would want to put an Apple Vision Pro on there, though. Then last but not least, VRX Arcade by Box Blaster and Benchmark finally came out. This one had been shown multiple times since I think 2022, maybe even 2021. I can't remember. But it only has one game on it right now called Golden Mace, which I believe is exclusive to arcades. But I believe this platform is supposed to allow operators to change out the arcade game on it. But gosh, I'm just never a big fan of when you can have your VR headset hit the floor. All right, so that is the end of 2023. Let's get into 2024, what's coming this year. So this month, at least as far as we know for certain, LAI Games is going to be releasing their games. And so they have some redemption games like Dragon's Bane, which is actually a coin pusher / video game. They have their Cosmic Tower straight coin pusher. But then they have Airstrike, which is a sit-down pendulum motion seat shoot 'em up / racer, in that you're supposed to reach this end goal and before the clock runs out. But the odd thing about it is that there's no accelerator, so I guess it's just based on not running into obstacles, taking out enemies quick enough so that you reach that finish line in time. Got video of all this and all these, most of these other games that were at IAPA on my channel in case you're interested. Alien Field 3671 for the X Arcadia. I mean, I've had this one on the list for a long time. I should confirm with them if this one's actually going to come out or not, if it might have gotten canceled. I don't like to keep games on here forever as coming soon if they're just not coming soon. We have Apex Rebels by 3 Mindwave and Sega. And so what you saw in the video that I shot at IAPA is not exactly the same of what the production model is going to be. This is probably a disclaimer I should put on all the videos of previews, is that don't make your final judgments, because something will change between what you're seeing, say, at IAPA and when it hits production, unless it's already the production model that they're showing. But Apex Rebels, they said it was 70% complete, and so there was another level to add, but there was also things to change on the handling, the tuning that up to make it feel, I guess, like the car has more weight and stuff like that. But I did enjoy the game. I could see where it feels almost like a spiritual successor to Daytona USA. That's definitely what they were going for. And at IAPA, the CEO of 3 Mindwave showed me some artwork that was rejected, unfortunately, for Apex Rebels, which it had 4 cars on it, and 3 of them were directly referencing Sega's history, like Outrun, Initial D, Daytona USA, and then they had the DeLorean from Back to the Future on there. And of course, there still is the Back to the Future reference with one of the power-ups, or one of the aero drift feature that's built into that game. But that is coming out. I think they were saying they're aiming for February or March. So if there's anybody on this stream that's watching this from the UK and you're able to go to EAG, then you'll be able to play a near final version of Apex Rebels and see how it has changed. And let me know what you think of it, and such. I already mentioned Asphalt Moto Blitz. Since this is coming through LAI Games, that's also releasing sometime this month. I'll get confirmation when these do launch. I'll post it on the website, maybe do a video if it warrants it. Avian Nights is an independently made game. Actually, the developer's here in Utah, where I'm at. And it's basically Joust, a new version of Joust, a Joust reboot. Multiplayer can handle either 2 or up to 4 players. They also have some esports features built into it. So the name of the company is Allen One. They actually won a local game developer award here recently from the University of Utah. But I'm not sure if this will have any significant differences in the software compared to the console version. Hello, Kevin. Good to see you. But yeah, Avian Nights is coming sometime. It was supposed to have been released last year, but they ran into some manufacturing problems, and so they're still sorting those out as their first game. But they also do have some other games in development. They didn't detail them to me very much, but I've been impressed with the guys I've been talking with, as they really want to understand the arcade industry and how it works. And so with that, I'm looking forward to what they do beyond. And I am supposed to also be testing Avian Nights at some point here at my arcade for a short time. I don't know. I can't recall exactly how long they wanted me to test it for them. But I'll have video of that. Bayani, here's another game that I've had on the coming soon list forever now, from Ranita Games, and coming to the X Arcadia. Just again, not sure when this is coming up. I haven't seen anything mentioned about it in X's lists recently. Bigfoot Mayhem by Eunice, and so I got to play this at IAPA. It's you drive monster trucks on an open circuit course. For a Eunice game, it looks really solid. It looks pretty good, actually. Could use some tweaking on the difficulty from what I played, but this is, since it's coming out in March, and I think they were saying it's going to sell for $15,000. And it comes in a similar cabinet to the deluxe version of Fast and Furious Arcade. They're looking to undercut them by $10,000, and so definitely competitive on the price. Bobblehead Baseball Versus by Andamiro, and so this will be available as either amusement only or a ticket redemption video game. Videmption, as I lovingly call it. Yeah, it brings baseball back to the arcade scene, which has not really been around in a very long time. And so as some of you probably know, have played some baseball arcade games, but really in recent times it's been more limited to Japan. I mean, obviously baseball is big in Japan too, but this has been odd that we haven't had the American pastime sport represented with a video game here, but it's simple, but it's fun. Cambria Sword, Another Cry, and so actually I do have. Let me pull up my list here, or at least I thought. Okay, I don't have it handy, but so Cambria Sword is supposed to come out in April. They didn't say the price yet, but it probably between $1,200 to $1,500 on the kit. You have Demon Bride X again for the X Arcadia, which will be a fighting game. Demon Bride, you've probably heard of before. And I don't know what differences this might have on the content side from the last version of Demon Bride that was released, but it is developed by Team Arcana, since they just finished Arcana Heart 3 Extend for the X Arcadia. Then I'm assuming that this one will be next on their roster, but whether that will be beginning of the year, end of the year, I have no idea at this point. Food Fight Frenzy, which I mentioned, this is actually being developed by Slackers Incorporated, which has done an indie game called Galactic Battleground, but this is an officially licensed new 4-player version of Atari's Food Fight, which came out back in 1983. And as I mentioned, this will debut at Midwest Gaming Classic, I believe in March, and even the CEO of Atari will be there as a part of that. And so, like I said, if I can find a way to attend both shows, I mean, if they're overlapping, then I'll have to give the priority to the Vegas show. But yeah, I'll see what I can do. We have Godzilla Kaiju Wars VR, which is coming out. From last they said was they're aiming for the end of March, the beginning of April. I mean, granted, with any of these release dates, unless they've been confirmed as releasing on a date, like say the LAI games, they've said that they are definitely shipping out in January. But other ones are going to be fluid. Just depends on different factors, manufacturing factors, development stuff. But Godzilla Kaiju Wars, when I see it at Amusement Expo, that should be the final production version of the game. And just to emphasize as well, it may only ship with 2 chapters, but eventually we'll have 5, and whoever buys one of those machines will have access to all 5. They'll get all 5 chapters for free. That one on the price, I was hearing quotes of around $46,000 on that one. And I guess really quick, as I talked about earlier, the problem with the arcade business has been just these enormously high prices. Now, I get it. There's been issues with inflation. There's been issues with production. There's been issues with shipping that have all driven costs up. But man, it's so difficult to as much as I might want, say, a Godzilla, I just can't afford it. It just makes no sense. I just can't do it, or I don't want to have that kind of monthly payment. And so, yeah, there's just lots of games that are not on my roster right now. I mean, that I'm interested in, but I just realistically, unless I want to risk going bankrupt, I can't get them. And so, yeah, there isn't anything on that list yet. Goldstorm Pirates. And so, yeah, this one has been testing quite a bit out there in both the U.S. and Japan. But the odd thing about it is it's not scheduled to be released until the very end of this year. So, like December of this year is when that's supposed to come out. So it's surprising that they're doing this much testing already. But I think that's because they have a lot of confidence in it. But maybe they're looking at ways of doing something different with it other than just a sequel. But the trailer we saw of it from the end of November, it looked impressive. We have Jam Jam and Jelly Excelente, which is coming out, I believe, the second quarter of this year. It's a shoot-'em-up game. Jitsu Squad is coming out in March, and this is also coming to X Arcadia. I gotta fix that, put that there. There is something, like I posted a video of this for my APA, but there is a licensed set of characters that are coming to this. I can't say what they are, because it has to be announced first, but some of you will know what they are that are going to be joining the roster of selectable characters. And so, but from what I did play, this game definitely is already different. It's tightened up from the console version, and it flows a lot faster through the levels than the console version does, and the enemies feel a lot less, say, bullet spongy than the console version. And so looking forward to that. Lane Master Extreme by Eunice is coming out possibly March or April. Mega Shot, which was the game that I was probably most impressed with at IAPA 2023 by Jet Games, is coming out February, possibly March. And that's one, if you didn't see it, it uses a realistic rifle. It's machined out of, I believe it's aluminum, and it's powered with a pneumatic air compressor. And very impressive game, and it kind of plays like Silent Scope, but instead of having the gun fixed to a point, you can move it around, and it uses a real gun scope on it too, which is pretty cool. Omen of Sorrow Rising Chaos. This is another fighting game. This one's coming out next month in February, and this is one that I'm actually very tempted by, because I loved how it looked. To be frank, most of the EXA games have not been impressive as far as how they look. They've a lot of them, because they are based on games that are trying to look retro, indie games and such. They carry that along with them. But now, while Omen of Sorrow, I believe, was a indie game on consoles, it still looks really good, coming from the PS4. But I'll need to find out exactly what content's being added to it. We have Perfect Pour coming out sometime later this year from DSM Arcade, which it's kind of like Tapper, the old Midway Tapper, but a new concept or a new twist on the concept of that. There's Playbox Mini by Playmine. They're a Canadian company, and it's a ball toss game. I have a video of this on my channel, and so it's just a smaller version of their large FEC one. Another fighter for X Arcadia, as I mentioned, there's lots of fighters coming this year. Phantom Breaker Omnia, and I got to play this. I was decent at it, not great, but gosh, what did it play like? I guess a little bit like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in a way. There's still Shakuga the Excommunication, which there's no date on that one yet, and I haven't heard anything about that in a long time, so I don't know how much it's changed since I last saw it, but I need to put that not safe for work tag on there because it's very not safe for work. Super Blaster by Triotech, coming, I believe they might have said March, April. It's like the Cube that I talked about earlier, but it's for, it's like an open air one, and I believe they said it was cheaper than the Cube is, which would be surprising, given that it's a much larger cabinet. But I'll have to talk more with Trio Tech about that one. Surf League by Coastal Amusements and Ace Amusement. That was an impressive surprise at IAPA. It's a kids game, kind of like Mario Kart, but with surfing instead of karts. They said they were going to make some changes to it from feedback that they got at the show before they would release it, but they didn't provide a release date on it yet. But I did like that one. I think in my arcade, when I do get kids in that need something like that, it would be a perfect game for them. There's Strip Fighter 5 Abnormal Edition, which also is just, I've not heard anything about that one in a long time. The other mystery has been Taiko no Tatsujin USA version, where, I mean, this was announced as testing last year, and it's shown up at multiple tests, but it's not shown up at a trade show yet. So I've not had a chance to play it. I think, as I recall, at IAPA when I asked about it, it was licensing on the music is what's holding it up. And so whenever they get around to getting that resolved, might be a money thing or not, who knows, then it'll release. But hopefully sooner rather than later, because you all want Taiko, right? Right. There is a game that I heard about that's coming from Konami. It's going to be a limited release. I can't say much more than that, but I'm really, really looking forward to what it is, because it's something that people know as far as what IP it belongs to, but I don't know much more than that. Sorry, let me help something. Hi. Sure. Yeah, no problem. All right, there you go. And if there's anything that's off that you want to play, let me know. I can turn it on for you. Thanks. Maybe it's Contra, maybe it's something else. It has been in our arcades before. That's all I'll say about it, beyond that. But be looking for it, or an announcement sometime soonish. That's the other thing. I have no idea when it's coming, other than that it is coming sometime. Another one that I have no idea when it's coming is the Fallen Angels, and I get people asking me about this sometimes in YouTube comments and elsewhere, because this is based on a game which saw extremely limited release in Japan back in the 90s. It was worked on by people who worked on King of Fighters, so it looks like King of Fighters, but they're redesigning it from the ground up, and they were saying that each character has something like 900 frames of animation for their moves, or something that was just very, very art intensive, and that's what's making it take so long. But yeah, so far I don't know when Fallen Angels is coming out. Another surprise, and I don't know who is doing this, is the Princess Bride Pinball. This was announced, or people started talking about this on Pinside, and there was also Nap Arcade mention it, where just some people started getting an email from some mystery company that takes you to a page, and I've got the link on here. If you click on it, I guess we can go there together. And this is all it shows you. And so you got Peter, gosh, I'm forgetting his name, his last name. I almost want to say, I know it's not Peter Gunn. And Fred Savage, I remember him, but this is the actor who played Columbo. But this is all we know about Princess Bride Pinball. But who's making it? No clue. I mean, I would guess it's more of a boutique pinball creator. You know, maybe Barrels of Fun, who did Labyrinth, or American Pinball, but I'm kind of leaning more towards Barrels of Fun, or it could be just somebody else that's brand new to the business. So who knows? Toho Scarlet Diabolic Fantastic, or I think that's supposed to be Fantastica. The next in the Toho Shoot 'em Up series is coming out this month, and so stay tuned for that if you're into those. And then, as you can see here, there are quite a few unannounced as of right now games for the X Arcadia. Now, a couple of these I do know what they are, but because they haven't been announced yet, I can't say what they are. But one of them is based on an IP that people know, and I think it can do really, really well. From what I've seen of it, it looks fantastic. That's another game that kind of like Omen of Sorrow, where it stands out just because it looks like a modern game. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And that one actually is making me hesitate as to whether or not I'll get Omen of Sorrow or not. The other one, other unannounced fighting game, I did get to play last year at Amusement Expo. It wasn't at IAPA, but it is a fighting game that did grace the Neo Geo MVS back in the day. But again, can't say what it is until it's been announced. But yeah, some interesting stuff coming to the X Arcadia. Very heavy on fighting games this year, but it still will have a few other things. One of these unannounced action games will have a different control scheme, which I was surprised to see. So look forward to those when we can talk more about them. And then last but not least is the Warlords remake by Retro Arcade Remakes, which I need to find out if that one might have already been released or not. Over in Japan, there are some other differences. Bike Dash Delivery is one that's been testing in Japan. I got the impression that this might come here to the States, but I don't know that for certain, so that's why I don't have it on the North American side list yet. But it's definitely coming into Japan. If you haven't seen this one yet, it's like Crazy Taxi meets Downhill Bikers or Prop Cycle. Like you ride a real bike where you have to pedal to make your bike pedal in the game. And so it's also been described kind of like you're doing Uber Eats, where you're trying to deliver things to customers. And so I would like to see this one show up here in the States because it looks cool and fun, but it'll probably be pretty pricey. X Arcadia games, so there's the base computer platform, which is, if I recall correctly, is $2,600, somewhere around there. And then the games themselves are sold as cartridges, and they come with art and such. They generally fall somewhere between $1,200 to $1,500. So when it comes to arcade pricing, like you probably heard me throw out a lot of numbers here, which have been probably sound absurd, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000. And so a game that's only $1,500 is... that's why I would call it affordable from the arcade perspective, because they do cost a lot less. Now, of course, you need the cabinet as well, and so I think if you get the X Arcadia official cabinet that comes with the computer, then it's something like $6,000-$7,000, somewhere around there. But I think that also comes with a game. But again, once you already get that platform, then it just doesn't cost you a lot. Now, with the Donut Dodo Do game that came out last year, that was $850. And so they have games that you could call them, say, the value line or something, where they're under $1,000, and they actually have several of them now. There's Donut Dodo Do. There's a couple of NES games that that were indie NES or homebrew NES games that they released on X Arcadia. Astro Ninja Man, Exa, I think it was, and there was another one where you gather stars and stuff. But there are a few games that they release which are cheap, I guess you could say, or affordable. It's probably the better word. Let's see if there's any other differences. Oh, the Idolmaster Tours by Bandai Namco is coming out sometime this year. And next month in February, I think it's the 24th or the 20th, I can't remember which of those dates, Wing and Midnight Maximum Tune 6RR Plus, which will celebrate the 20th anniversary of Wing and Midnight Maximum Tune. As I mentioned earlier in the stream, we were supposed to be getting 7, but there were some issues there, and so they're doing this as a stopgap. But as we talked about a little bit on Discord, there's no reason that Namco will be bringing this out beyond their normal, what they call international markets. So like Japan, Indonesia, Malaysia, Australia, I think, those parts there, Oceania as it's sometimes called. But will the States and Europe be getting 6RR Plus? No, not that I've heard anything about. A long time ago, I heard that or somebody from Namco told me that they were going to skip 6 for North America and Europe, but that the intention was to have 7 come out in North America and Europe. And so I guess if you're a Maximum Tune fan, just keep holding out, as 7 should be there. But when 7 will be coming along, I don't know in that regard. And so, yeah, any other questions about games that were released or are coming soon to the market? I guess this is a good time for me to mention what my best and worst games were for last year. I probably should have done this earlier. And I'll have to clip this out as its own separate video. But if you're interested in how games have done for me, now again, keep in mind if you missed this part of the stream, last year was a very bizarre year for me. That did not fit the normal patterns of what earnings are. It was actually pretty weak compared to some other years. And so that's where you can take into account some of these numbers. I mean, there's other arcades out there where their games probably make some of these amounts in a month, whereas it takes me a whole year to see some of these games that make this much money. So I'm definitely not at anywhere near the top of what games make. But this can still give you an idea of what real world performance is out in an arcade that's in a mall that's still using tokens. But my number one game, yes, I'm Pure Arcade. Maybe when I changed my name a couple of years ago, it's currently Arcade Galactic, but maybe I should have called it Pure Arcade. But yeah, I don't have any ticket redemption games, stuff like that. I do have some prize machines, the instant prize machines, but yeah, I have steered away from those others. There's $4. And there's 8. Thank you. Let me go turn some games on really quick. Also gave me a second to rest my voice. I'm going to lose my voice after this stream. But Maximum Tune 5 was my number one game, and it made $10,842.75. One thing to note about that is that one of my units was down for about 10 weeks. So the graphics card on it died. And one thing I'm not happy about is how much they want to fix it. It's like, this thing is probably a $50 graphics card, but they're charging me almost $500 for it. It's like, I understand that they got to make some money, but it just seems a bit absurd on that amount. And so I'm not happy about it, but it's like, what can you do? But yeah, so even down with one of the sides down for quite a while, and before that had been having a lot of problems where it kept crashing, and that kept affecting it too. So that wasn't had both sides been working perfectly the entire year, then it would have done better than that. But that was my number one game. So Maximum Tune does have legs. It does work out well. It's just, yeah, that's sucks when it breaks down. It sucks when any of these games break down. My number two game was a little bit surprising too. I mean, not for me so much, but it might be surprising for others to hear this. But Jurassic Park Arcade by Raw Thrills, which came out in 2015, made $9,629.25. And so that is still a great game. And actually, that one also had one of the guns were down for a little while, and at the very beginning of the year. And so I was only working with one gun until I had to buy a whole gun replacement. Also, it was not cheap. It was something like $700. So I hate it when that happens. Right now I got to replace one of my guns on Aliens entirely because something inside of the gun shell broke and there's no way to fix it. I've tried to rig it up, but it just doesn't work. And so it's like I need a new gun shell. So I might be able to get away with just buying the shell, but that's still expensive. Number 3 was Cruise and Blast at $9,086, and that was from Raw Thrills. NBA Hoops, which is by Ice, a basketball game. Combining on all these that have 2 of them, I'm combining them together. I have 2 NBA Hoops. That made $7,488.25. And then number 5 was The Walking Dead by Raw Thrills at $7,531. I didn't write it down, but I noticed that number 6, if I was going to be doing like a top 10 or something, would have been House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn by Sega, but it was somewhere in the 6,000 range. I am a little bit surprised that House of the Dead is not done as well as Walking Dead. I mean, the game costs a lot more than Walking Dead does, but for some reason, I guess the Walking Dead name attracts people more for killing zombies than House of the Dead does. Go figure. Now, my worst games of the year, my bottom 5. Well, when it comes to prize machines, so I actually don't own these. Like, if you've been in the stream for a while, you might have seen that I was counting tokens for somebody. That was an operator that I work with where he has a few games here. And so he has what's called an S-Cube, which is by Endemiro. It's an instant prize merchandising machine where you try and get the symbol into the cutout to win a prize. And such. And then he has a duck catcher crane machine, and then he has a prize time machine. Hey, if you're gonna do that, hey, you're not welcome here if you're gonna be hitting my stuff.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's not just sorry, dude.
You guys just take cash?
We do cash and card, but if you guys are gonna be violent or anything like that, you're not welcome here. So can you guarantee me that there's not gonna be anything like that again? Oh, you got to tell him I'm not gonna tolerate any of that crap.
I'll let him know. Yeah, I'll do the $10.
Okay. There's 5. There's 10. And this is the one part I hate about running an arcade. Teenagers. Hey, any drinks have to stay up here or outside. Thank you. Okay. Anyways. Let's see. Bottom 5 games. Centipede, which was also has Missile Command and Millipede, made $75.75 over the entire year. Knights of the Round, $72.75. Hydra by Atari Games, $63.50. Bubble Bobble 3, which actually has been starting to have some monitor problems here in the past couple of months. Just a dark monitor. $54, and then Pitfall 2 by Sega at $44.25. Tubin by Atari Games did make $6.25, but it's been broken most of the year with a bad monitor. Let's see, your question, Alex. Any titles either because of earning or reliability that should be steered clear of? I mean, most operators would say, I don't hear good things that operators say about Unis. I've only ever had one Unis game here, so I can't personally attest to that, but I know there's a few operators out there that don't like them, but on the same time, there's a lot of operators that still buy their equipment. I know Chuck E. Cheese's has bought a lot of their stuff too. So obviously if nobody bought their stuff, they wouldn't be in business. But I guess I would just say it depends on the game there. So I don't know if it's more maybe a particular type of machine that they have is less reliable than their other ones. Like, generally speaking, most video games are reliable because they don't have a lot of moving parts and stuff, whereas redemption games, you can run into issues there just because they do tend to have more moving parts, and with moving parts there's always going to be a problem. Even top quality ones will eventually break down, but it just depends on the reliability. As I mentioned or complained about here a moment ago, the thing with Bandai Namco in repairs is like both Bandai Namco and Sega, they're generally not great to deal with when it comes to the costs of their repairs. Like when you go through them directly to get something fixed, I mean, warranties in this industry suck. Most things here, even though you're paying tens of thousands of dollars for a machine, you're getting a 90-day warranty on a lot of these things. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And yeah, you're just looking at a headache when something breaks down, and it's like, you know that this part only costs, say, $50 or $100, where you can find something like it online, but they do something with it, say, like with graphics cards, they usually change the BIOS in it, and so, like, if you just throw any graphics card in there, it won't work unless you have the BIOS, or something like that, so it forces you to go through them, but then they charge this enormous premium for it, and, you know, it feels ripped off, but you're also just like, well, I can't do anything about it. So that's something that you kind of, I guess, have to consider when it comes to buying certain brands, is that, you know, some of them do try and lock it down to where you just can't buy off-the-shelf parts, whereas others do allow you to get off-the-shelf parts, like Raw Thrills, generally speaking. They don't do anything there to lock it down, and that does make it a little more affordable to fix. Although one weird problem that I've had with Raw Thrills machines, and that I've also seen from other operators, is that they've used a brand of LCD monitor from a pretty popular company amongst the arcade manufacturers called Weiya, WEI-YA. I think they're based out of Taiwan, if I'm not mistaken. But they have a bunch of monitors which fail constantly. Like the LED lights inside of them just crap out, and so like both of my Cruise and Blasts, the monitors died on them, and I've not had LCDs die on anything else, knock on wood. But yeah, that, or I'm sorry, I have I have a Hot Racers by Sega, which actually came from a Chinese company called SEA, where both the monitors on those recently crapped out, and so not just the Raw Thrills ones, but I know an operator out of San Francisco where he's shown me pictures of, you know, dozens of Raw Thrills games like Superbikes 2 and Cruisin' and all these games where the monitors have died on them. Now it's the lights on them, and that is replaceable. I have a video where I show taking apart a monitor from Cruisin' and replacing the LEDs inside of them and putting it back together. It's just, I kind of hate doing that. You know, it took me 4 or 5 hours to do that, and so that part sucks. But like, that's the only other ever serious issue I've ever had with Raw Thrills. I know in the past, stuff like the original Fast and Furious, sometimes the computer crashed quite frequently. But when it comes to their more recent stuff, things have been more stable. But yeah, as P. Haas mentions as well, joystick games just make less than driving and shooting games. It's just how it's been for a long time. And that's another reason why fighters don't tend to do as well in the business anymore, is apart from the fact that almost none of them are exclusive, it's just people aren't drawn to joystick games because there's really nothing there that's that different from playing at home on a gamepad. And so that's where light gun games and racing games and dancing games tend to do a lot better, because it's something unique. It's a gimmick, but it's a gimmick that works, that still brings people in. And so like, I have a Minecraft Dungeons arcade, which it did okay last year, but not that great, and it's a joystick game. It has the cards to try and make up for it, but yeah. Great questions. Feel free to keep throwing them in. I'm going to continue on here. I'm going to try and end this soon because my voice is starting to go out a little bit. Location watch. So as always, we're going to cover locations that open their doors. I am considering maybe changing this up a little bit. Like, you usually wait for a lot of locations to open their doors before I make a post, so I can post about a bunch of them at once. Perhaps it makes more sense for me to start posting about them when I hear about them, which would just, I don't know, maybe that's better. Let me know what you guys think. What would you rather see? Or maybe I could do them by port region in the world, like when we have 5 or more that have opened in the States, do a location watch post about those that have opened in the States or Europe or Asia, etc. Something like that. But as I mentioned here, growth in the industry has still been pretty solid, even post-pandemic. We did 5 location watch posts there, and I went through and counted how many new arcade locations we discussed last year, and that was 202. Now, that does not mean that only 202 opened up around the world last year. That's just the ones that I heard about. There's probably a lot more, and because there's always a few where I'll come across the news that they opened like a year ago or something, and it's like I totally missed it. It just happens sometimes. But if any of you do hear about a new location opening up out there, let me know, and I'll be happy to post about it. And also, just speaking about the arcade industry in general, like the FEC market has blown up even more. Like I posted this image here that showed data from 2015, and FECs, there was around 3,500, arcades 2,500, street locations that I talked about much earlier, 160,000. But growth on the FEC side has just been really, really strong in the past several years, really. And Dave & Buster's main event combined has over 220 locations. Round One USA has 50. There's other chains that are growing. Chuck E. Cheese's used to have 1,000, but I thought I saw a post from the CEO of Chuck E. Cheese's who said they had 558, but I couldn't find it to link to it again. That Chuck E. Cheese's is still the biggest arcade chain in the world. And from this infographic that they shared, they've been doing pretty well. And so there's been growth. For top 10 videos and posts on the channel, the top 10 videos here was the one that people watched the most was that Minecraft direct video where I fought the Obsidian monstrosity. Then followed by Walking Dead full playthrough, Cruise and Blast arcade playthrough, Aliens Armageddon playthrough, the official trailer for The Walking Dead, Let's Unbox The Walking Dead machine, another Minecraft video of the Fiery Forge, Chapter 3 of The Walking Dead arcade, back when I did just that one for some reason, a long time ago, Maximum Tune 5DX Plus unboxing install, and then Jurassic Park arcade unboxing and setup. I did a direct capture of the House of the Gun Dead video, which was the best video that I posted last year as far as how that went. And then for the top stories that readers got into last year, we had Location Watch February 2023 was in 10th place. Goldstorm Pirate Scene on Test in the USA in 9th. Unico USA launches 26-inch arcade CRT replacement LCD panels, which again, I have a video of that. And I have a second LCD panel here, which I need to be putting into. I just need to decide which game I'm going to do that with. Maybe Gauntlet's Dark Legacy. Hi. Are you playing the prize machines over there, or are you playing the video games? Okay, you can just put that right in the machine. Yeah, you don't need tokens for it.
What's good luck?
Huh? Oh, yeah, good luck. Let's see, number 7, Ice Cold Beer Remix, set to release in February. Got delayed till May. Andamiro pulls the curtain back on Pump It Up Phoenix. And then 5 was Raw Thrills to launch Godzilla Kaiju Wars VR at IAAPA 2023. Then the IAAPA 2023 preview was number 4. Bandai Namco Amusements testing a sequel to Dead Storm Pirates in Japan. This was the first story about Goldstorm Pirates, and so that was number 3. And then a roundup for JPO 2023 was number 2, because you guys are really interested in new arcade games coming to Japan. And then number 1 would be Bandai Namco's Taiko no Tatsujin goes on test in the USA. So that's the most read stories, most watched videos from last year. Guys, got any questions about the arcade industry else that you want to see, or suggestions for videos that you guys want to see me do going into this next year? I'd really appreciate that too. One thing that I did launch this past year was a membership as part of the YouTube channel. So I always want to make sure that I have content that members can get into for their different tiers. And I have been posting members only videos and sharing some members only stuff and previews that they get before anybody else. So there's that. But any suggestions, whether it's for members or for videos of stuff you guys want to see, let me know and I'll see what I can do. How did Gungeon do? Good question. Let me pull it up. Now, do note that on top of it being a lousy year last year, and I got this game, I think it was in July. It made $716.50 over the entire year. So out of all my light gun games, it was one of the lowest ones, but obviously if I had had it the entire year, it probably would have done better. And then also, as I mentioned earlier on, if it didn't have the gun problems that it's been having, I even had some last week where I had to get on the phone with them to help figure those out. Then it would certainly be doing a lot better. And so when it does work and people encounter it, it does pretty well. And so like I've seen some weeks where it's doing really, really nicely. But like I said, they need to sort those gun issues out. I mean, I've been hearing rumors about a Back to the Future pinball for a while, so this question comes from The Last of Engine. Any pinball theme you would buy without a question? Mine are Back to the Future and Futurama. Also, SpongeBob would be great. I mean, I guess I'm not as much into that. I would buy it blindly without thinking about it, just because, as I mentioned, unfortunately, pinball just is so weak as an earner that I have a hard time justifying it anymore. But let's say money wasn't an object. I'd probably get the Weird Al pinball machine without hesitation. I liked what I play. I'm like trying to think between Elton John and Godfather. I guess I liked Godfather a little bit more, although the look of Elton John was better. But maybe it's just because I didn't get enough time to spend on Elton John to choose between the two. But maybe Godfather. Venom is one, like a premium Venom. I would grab a premium Godzilla is another one that I would grab. I've heard a lot of good stuff about Godzilla, as well as a Cactus Canyon remake. In fact, I've heard from multiple operators out there that out of all the pinball machines that they own, Godzilla and Cactus Canyon remake are consistently higher earners than anything else. And it doesn't matter what region of the world it's in, that seems to be the case. And so that's interesting to me, and because of that, where it's like, well, I want to spend more on pinball when it comes to those that I know for certain are earning well, as opposed to just buying them based on the theme at this point, where it's like those interest me. But if it came just down to themes and I didn't care about what they were earning, yeah, I could see a Back to the Future. I already got Ghostbusters. That was one of my favorite movies growing up. I would have to think a Harry Potter one would do really well. Or even maybe a Percy Jackson one. I mean, I've never really read anything of Percy Jackson, but like my daughter has, and she's into it, and it's like I think that would draw some people in. But no, actually some video game related ones. Hi. $10 in tokens, or do you want cash? 10 in tokens. There's 5. And there's 10. Nope. Or, sorry, I was just thinking, it's like, yeah, it would make more sense. For me, ones that I would love to see are themes based on video games. Like, I mean, I don't care about, I haven't played this game in a long time, but I'm sure a Call of Duty pinball machine would probably do all right. But a Minecraft one would make more sense than that, even. I guess I'm thinking more of what might earn well as opposed to what I would just probably enjoy. I mean, I guess it just depends on who designs it and what the design's like. But like a new Super Mario Brothers pinball machine would probably be cool. One that I personally would go for, probably without asking many questions, would either be Legend of Zelda or Metroid. Either of those I'd probably get at the drop of a hat. Hi, how's it going?
I probably also wouldn't mind. I've thought about designing an Atari 2600 themed pinball machine that would have like a lots of games to it, but it's one of those many projects that I never really finished. Years ago, I did design an original pinball concept just on like a notepad. Didn't like go into a CAD program and really design it like I should have though, but I thought it might be fun to do. But yeah, Zelda pinball I think I would probably get that without too much hesitation, unless of course it was $15,000, and it's like, well, sorry. Only when I'm rich. But yeah. Older driving and gun games, are they in good investment? It just depends on what they are. Yeah, trying to think, right? I haven't looked at prices in a while on used games to know like what they're currently sitting at. I mean, things have been warped for a while since inflation really kicked in a couple years back, but I mean, yeah, some games just do seem to hold their value. Like Area 51 seems to hold its value decently well. San Francisco Rush 2049. Daytona USA, if it's, I mean, granted, the caveat with any of these is if it's working fine, then it's gonna hold its value. But a lot of these games don't hold up super well after 20 years, 30 years, and such. Maybe Initial D3, but last time I came across one of those, it was in very poor condition. Trying to think of any other games that might be good investments as an older game. I did like Sega's Hummer. I know I'm probably in the minority in that, but I've kind of wanted to get a Hummer for a long time. In fact, I almost got one once. Yeah, House of the Dead, that's a good, solid one. Time Crisis, yeah, I don't know why that one was escaping me. Almost any Time Crisis is a good investment. Like, I have Time Crisis 2, I have Time Crisis 3. They don't do amazingly well, but they do fine. And, they do better than some other light gun games from those eras. And at least in my region, like here in Utah, there's always been a thing for Time Crisis, more so than maybe some other light gun games. And so maybe there's some cultural differences or something that drives gameplay there. Trying to think. Silent Scope, probably a good one too. If the CRT monitor in that one goes out, you can replace it with an LCD, which you can't do with anything else. Carnival is also another great one. I wish I didn't have to sell my Carnival off, which I did, I think it was last year. But after it had been sitting in my back room dead for like 5 years or something, it's like, I just need to sell this to somebody else. And Carnival is one, that I would love to see a remake of. I mean, yeah, I get it when it comes to remakes and stuff. At least on the Hollywood side, it sucks, or they don't have any original ideas. But there are some arcade games where I wouldn't mind seeing remakes, just because it's like, as long as it keeps the spirit of the original but just looks better, then I don't see where it would be an issue. Now, of course, if they really drastically changed the game from what it originally was, like, say, in Carnival, if they really censored it and removed all the little humor and other things out of it, then I wouldn't be interested. And, of course, that's what Hollywood does with most of their remakes, and that's why most remakes suck, is because they, gut the spirit of the original. But, if you maintained that spirit and really just remade the graphics, then it would probably be fine. Hi. There's your change. You're welcome. So yeah, those are ones that come to mind as good investments, I guess you could say. I mean, one thing that pinball does have over video games is pinball holds its value much better and more consistently than any video game does. which is kind of funny given that pinball breaks down a lot more than any video game does. But just seems almost, regardless of what the theme is, they hold their value a lot better. And maybe it's because they're also sculptures of art that you can play, more so than a video game is. I don't know. But yeah, if you're looking at investing into this business, then pinball can be a decent way, I guess, to spend a lot of money. That's burning a hole in your pocket. But yeah, any other questions that anybody has? Or what games are you looking forward to the most this year? I would assume that just from the popular stories on the site, Taiko no Tatsujin is up there. Goldstorm Pirates also seems to be up there too. Any kind of concepts you would like to see the arcade industry do? Do you want to see more fighters, or do you want to see more shoot 'em ups? Do you want to see more original titles? Do you want to see better graphics, or do you not care? What kind of things do you guys, I assume most of you are players and not operators watching this, but maybe I'm wrong. What do you want to see from arcades? Yeah, I'm not sure how well the Hot Pink Club is sold. I heard there were some strip clubs that got some. Again, if you're not familiar with that, it's like the XR Arcadia, but it's just for adult games. And I think there's 2 or 3 games available on it right now, but nothing else yet. I mean, there are some games in development. Hi. Here you go. The reason why Street Fighter still gets arcade games is because Capcom still has a little bit of an arcade division in Japan. It's not much. It's actually kind of very strange how Capcom behaves in Japan. But I think it's just because of the arcade culture that still exists there, being what it is, kind of drives them to it. But at the same time, at least the impression that I get with Street Fighter is that Capcom kind of uses it as a marketing prop, as opposed to like this legitimate game that's standing out there. I mean, maybe that's the wrong way to say it, but at least to me, that's kind of how it's felt, where it's like, this is just a great way for us to promote Street Fighter 6 on console and get more sales that way. Whereas here in the States, there's just never been that strong demand thrown at, say, Ed Boon's to do an arcade version, would be my guess. You playing the prize machines? No, just put the dollars right in the machine. And Demon Souls Arcade. Well, I guess an Elden Ring pinball machine might work. I don't know how you could do a video game version of that. Are you playing the prize machines? What? I don't speak Spanish, I'm sorry. You want tokens? Or you. I haven't heard anything about Dark Presence. I thought that Doc Mac did an update on that last year, but I wasn't able to catch the stream, and yeah, I'm not sure. It might be available. I'll have to reach out to him and find out if it's available. It's just they haven't worked with any distributor, and I don't know that if they've done any like mass manufacturing for that. So yeah, I'll have to ask Doc. But yeah, I haven't heard anything in a long time. So yeah, that's one game that gosh, that puts other development hell things to shame for how long that's been around. Because I think they said they started working on that like 2006 or something. So it's. I mean, it would be great to still see it come along, but I guess part of the problem, too, is it's like, say they do have a playable build, but then it sucks. You know, you still you want to go back to the drawing board and make it not suck. But I don't know, since I've not had a chance to play it. And that's another thing, when it comes to traveling, I need to get over to Chicago and visit Raw Thrills and some others there, but also visit Galloping Ghost Arcade and see for myself. Yeah, I guess any other questions? Things you're curious about? Trying to think. Yeah, like I imported my Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. There was a company in Japan that was exporting games, and unfortunately I cannot remember their name anymore. I'm not even sure if they're in business anymore, but so I have the Japanese version of that, isn't it? Super Street Fighter 2 X, I think. Bubble Bobble 3 I imported. Just the game board. Although I do have a Joyro cabinet, which is a candy cabinet from Andamiro, so a Korean candy cab. I haven't heard of any reliable sources on importing, but there is a arcade collector. He's here in Utah. He goes by Lemony Vengeance. He would probably be the one to contact about imports. He does that a lot. And I think he just got his hands on a DDR, is it an X? I can't remember exactly which one he grabbed, but yeah, he's constantly dealing with importers. Because I know there's a guy he's talked with, I think based out of Las Vegas, that does some importing, and it would be pretty reliable. Just unfortunately I hadn't... since I haven't used them, I don't know. I can't recall their names, but I've heard him talk about those guys quite a bit, and so that would probably be one. But yeah, I don't do a ton of importing. Most of the time I try and get my stuff just through distribution channels that exist here. That way there's better support in case something goes wrong. But, you know, I have a Darius Burst and Other Chronicle from Taito, which... in a way, that's almost like an import. It's just it was tested here through Betson for a little while, and then and it was translated into English too. So there's that. But if I ever have problems with that, it's obviously way out of warranty now. But even then, I would have had to go, I think, through Taito to get any help with that. But yeah, not much of an answer. Sorry, but I'll have to do some research, but again, look up Lemony Vengeance. I think he's on Facebook, and he does a lot of importing stuff, and he could probably point you in the right direction there. But I think that'll do it for this stream. Again, 2023, decent year, kind of mixed as far as business goes. It was good to see a lot of game releases start coming back after we had 2020 and 2021 and 22. But this year's looking good so far, and so hopefully it stays that way. Again, my heart goes out to those people in Japan affected by those earthquakes there, and so I'm just hoping that there hasn't been any deaths out of that, and that they'll be able to rebuild, and that hopefully businesses will be able to rebuild, because some of the damage I saw was pretty intense stuff, but they are resilient there, and so I know they'll be able to, just hopefully sooner rather than later. But thank you guys for watching this stream. Thank you for supporting the site, and stay tuned for more arcade goodness in 2024. And we'll see you around.